My name is David Morrison. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 38 years as an electrical engineer for Ontario Hydro before I retired 2 years ago. My wife Linda died 4 years ago from ovarian cancer. Stage 4. By the time they found it, there was nothing anyone could do. We were married for 34 years. She was my best friend, my partner, my everything. After she passed, people kept telling me I'd move on, find someone new, maybe downsize. But this house, our house in Mississauga, holds every memory we built together. 4 bedrooms, big backyard where we raised our son Kyle, the kitchen where Linda taught him to make her famous butter tarts. I'm not ready to let that go. Maybe I never will be. I stay busy. I volunteer at the community center on Tuesdays, play hockey with the Old Timers League on Thursdays, and I've got my workshop in the basement where I restore antique radios. My neighbor Frank and I grab coffee at Tim Hortons most mornings. My pension from Hydro is solid. My savings are healthy, and Linda's life insurance meant I'd never have to worry about money. I'm comfortable. I'm independent. And at 64, despite what some people seem to think, I'm far from needing a caretaker. My son Kyle is 36. He was a good kid growing up, made the travel hockey team, got decent marks, went to Ryerson for business. But something changed after he married Brittany 5 years ago. She's 33, works in marketing, though I've never quite figured out what that means, and has very specific ideas about how life should look. Designer handbags, expensive dinners, a lifestyle they can barely afford on Kyle's income from his struggling consulting business. This past October, I was hosting Thanksgiving dinner like I do every year. It was just going to be Kyle, Brittany, and me. My brother Tom and his family were visiting his wife's relatives in Halifax, so it was a small gathering. I'd spent the morning preparing the turkey, making Linda's stuffing recipe, peeling potatoes. The house smelled like butter and sage, the way it used to when she was alive. They arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Brittany was wearing a new Canada Goose jacket, the $1,500 kind, and carrying a leather bag I recognized from the Holt Renfrew window. Kyle looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he'd lost weight. We sat down to dinner, and at first, everything seemed normal. We talked about the Leafs' terrible start to the season, the early snow we'd had last week, my upcoming trip to see Tom at Christmas. But I could feel something brewing. Brittany kept exchanging glances with Kyle, and he kept avoiding eye contact with me. Finally, halfway through the meal, Kyle cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk to you about something." I set down my fork. "Okay." Brittany jumped in before Kyle could continue. "It's about Brittany's parents, Greg and Susan. They're having some financial difficulties." I knew Greg and Susan, nice enough people. Greg had worked in manufacturing before the plant closed, and Susan was a dental hygienist. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "What kind of difficulties?" Kyle glanced at Brittany, then back at me. "They might lose their apartment. The rent keeps going up, and Greg's been having trouble finding steady work since the plant shut down. They're looking at having to move in with Susan's sister in Barrie, but that's not ideal because we want them to move in here," Brittany cut in. Her voice was flat, like she was stating a fact rather than making a request. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your house, David." She never called me Dad, always David. "You have 4 bedrooms. You live here alone. It makes perfect sense." I felt my chest tighten. "Brittany, I appreciate that your parents are in a tough spot, but this is my home. I'm not looking for roommates." "Roommates?" Her voice rose. "They're family. And you're rattling around in this big house all by yourself. Don't you think it's selfish to have all this space when people who need it are struggling?" Kyle put his hand on her arm. "Britt, maybe we should." She shook him off. "No, Kyle. We talked about this. Your dad needs to hear the truth." She turned back to me. "You're 64 years old, David. You're not getting any younger. What if something happens to you? What if you fall down the stairs or have a heart attack and nobody's here?" "I'm 64, not 94, I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I played hockey just last Thursday. I volunteer. I drive. I manage my own finances. I don't need supervision. That's not the point. Brittany's face was flushing now. The point is, you're being selfish. You have more space than you need, and you're hoarding it. Hoarding? I felt anger starting to bubble up. I built a life in this house with my wife. She died here, in our bedroom upstairs, with me holding her hand. Every corner of this place has memories. I'm not ready to give up. That's not hoarding. That's grief. Kyle looked down at his plate. Brittany's jaw clenched. Linda's been gone for 4 years, David. At some point, you need to move on. The words hit me like a slap. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking. I think you should leave. We're not leaving, Brittany snapped. Not until you agree to think about this. My parents need help, and you're sitting here in your shrine to the past, refusing to do the decent thing. The decent thing? My voice was rising now. The decent thing is respecting my boundaries. I said no. That's my answer. Brittany stood up too, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She picked up her coffee mug, one of Linda's favorites, with little blue flowers painted on it, and for a second, I thought she was just going to set it down. Instead, she threw it. The mug hit me square in the chest. It was still half full of hot coffee, and the liquid splashed across my sweater, soaking through to my shirt. The ceramic shattered against my ribs, and I felt a sharp pain as one of the pieces cut through the fabric and nicked my skin. You're a selfish old man, Brittany screamed. You don't deserve this house. You don't deserve anything Linda left you. Kyle finally stood up, but he didn't come to my defense. He just stood there, frozen, staring at the mess on the floor. I looked down at my chest. Coffee was dripping down my sweater, my favorite one, the gray wool one Linda had given me for our last Christmas together. There was a small tear in the fabric, and I could see blood starting to seep through. I looked up at Brittany. Her face was twisted with rage. Kyle looked sick, pale, but he still wasn't saying anything. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Now. Gladly, Brittany spat. She grabbed her coat and stormed toward the door. Kyle hesitated for a moment, his mouth opening like he wanted to say something, but then he just shook his head and followed her. The door slammed. I stood in my dining room, covered in coffee and broken ceramic, listening to their car start and drive away. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and called Frank. Hey, David, how's... Frank, can you come over? Now? He heard something in my voice. On my way. Frank arrived 10 minutes later. He took one look at me and his eyes went wide. Jesus, David, what happened? My daughter-in-law threw a coffee mug at me. She what? I showed him the blood on my shirt. She threw Linda's mug. It hit me in the chest. Cut me. Frank's face darkened. You need to go to the hospital. That needs to be documented. I know. And then you're calling the police. I nodded slowly. I know that too. Frank drove me to Credit Valley Hospital. The emergency room doctor cleaned the cut. It wasn't deep, but it was clear it had been caused by something sharp hitting me with force, and took photographs. He asked what happened. I told him. He documented everything, noting that this was an assault. I'm required to file a report, he said gently. Elder abuse is taken very seriously. I'm not elderly, I said automatically, then stopped. But yes, file the report. While Frank waited in the lobby, I sat in the examination room and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Patricia Thompson. Patricia was Linda's best friend from nursing school. After Linda died, Patricia had been my lifeline. She'd helped me navigate grief, pushed me to stay active, checked in on me regularly. 6 months ago, over coffee, I'd mentioned some weird interactions with Kyle and Brittany. Questions about my finances, subtle suggestions that I was getting forgetful, comments about the house being too much for me. Patricia had gone very still. David, I worked in elder care for 20 years before I retired. What you're describing sounds like the setup for financial elder abuse. I'd been shocked. Kyle wouldn't do that. Maybe not Kyle alone. But Brittany? I don't trust her. Document everything, keep records, and talk to a lawyer. I'd followed her advice. 3 months ago, I'd met with James Chen, an estate lawyer Patricia recommended. James had listened to my concerns and helped me set up protections. A living trust, updated power of attorney documents that named Tom instead of Kyle. cameras installed discreetly in the main rooms of my house, and strict password changes on all my financial accounts. If they try anything, James had said, you'll have evidence, and you'll be protected. Now, sitting in the hospital, I texted Patricia. It happened. Brittany assaulted me. I'm at Credit Valley. Do I call James now? Her response came back in seconds. Yes, calling you in 2 minutes. When Patricia called, I gave her the full story. She was silent for a moment after I finished. David, you need to press charges. Tonight. I know, and we need to check your accounts. If they're desperate enough to assault you, they might try to access your money. My stomach dropped. I'll call the bank tomorrow. No, call them now. Ask them to flag any unusual activity in the last 72 hours. I hung up with Patricia and called RBC's 2-4-hour line. I explained the situation and asked them to review my accounts for any attempted access. The representative put me on hold. When she came back, her voice was careful. Mr. Morrison, I'm showing 3 failed login attempts on your online banking between October 7th and today. The attempts used incorrect passwords, but they did correctly answer your security questions. My blood ran cold. What were the security questions? Your mother's maiden name, your first pet's name, and your wedding anniversary date. All information Kyle would know. Can you tell me what IP address those attempts came from? I can't give you specific details, but I can tell you they weren't from your registered devices. Flag my account, I said. Change all security questions. Require in-person verification for any major changes. Already done, sir. And I'm escalating this to our fraud department. When I got home, Frank helped me check the security footage from my cameras. I'd installed them 3 months ago, small cameras hidden in the bookshelf in the living room, the kitchen cabinet, and the hallway. They were motion activated and uploaded directly to cloud storage. We pulled up the footage from dinner. There it was, Brittany throwing the mug. The angle caught everything, her arm drawing back, the mug flying through the air, the impact, my stumble backward. The audio picked up her screaming, "You're a selfish old man, and you don't deserve this house." That's assault, Frank said quietly, clear as day. We also found something else. Earlier in the evening, while I was in the kitchen carving the turkey, the camera caught Kyle walking through the hallway. He paused outside my home office, tried the door handle, I always kept it locked, then moved on. He was trying to get into your office, Frank said, where I keep my financial documents. I finished. The next morning, I called James Chen. He listened to everything, asked me to send him the video files and the hospital documentation, then said, "David, I'm contacting the police on your behalf. This is assault, attempted fraud, and possibly conspiracy to commit elder abuse. You need to file a formal report. Will they take it seriously? I'm not hurt badly. It was just a coffee mug. David, it doesn't matter if it was a coffee mug or a frying pan. She threw an object at you with the intent to harm. You were injured. You required medical attention. That's assault. And given the financial access attempts, this looks like a pattern of abuse." 2 days later, 2 officers from Peel Regional Police came to my house. They took my statement, reviewed the video footage, collected the coffee-stained sweater as evidence, and reviewed the hospital report and bank records. "Mr. Morrison, based on what we've seen here, we're recommending charges for assault and attempted fraud," the older officer said. "We'll be speaking with your son and daughter-in-law. What happens now? We'll investigate, and if the Crown decides to proceed, charges will be filed. In the meantime, we recommend you consider a restraining order." 3 days after that, Kyle called me. "Dad, the police came to our house. They said Brittany's being charged with assault. They said I might be charged with attempted fraud. What the hell is going on?" "You know exactly what's going on, Kyle. I didn't do anything. You tried to access my bank accounts. 3 times. The bank has records." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Dad, I can explain. Our business is struggling. We have debts. Brittany said if you could just steal my money." "It's not stealing. You're our father. You're supposed to help us." "I'm supposed to help you by letting you drain my savings, by letting Brittany assault me, by giving up my home so her parents can move in? She didn't mean to hurt you. She threw a ceramic mug at my chest. Kyle. It cut me. I bled. I have scars. There's video footage. What part of that was an accident? Kyle's voice broke. Dad, please, don't do this. Don't press charges. Brittany will lose her job. We'll lose everything. You've already lost everything, I said quietly. You lost it the moment you decided I was just an ATM machine. The moment you tried to hack my accounts. The moment you stood there and watched your wife attack me and didn't say a word to defend me. I'm your son, and I'm your father. Not your bank. Not your property to exploit. I hung up. The next few weeks were a blur. Brittany was formally charged with assault. Kyle wasn't charged criminally, but the bank flagged him in their fraud system, and James helped me file a civil restraining order against both of them. I also changed my will, removing Kyle as a beneficiary and naming my brother Tom and Patricia as executors instead. Tom called me from Halifax when he heard, "David, I'm so sorry. I knew Brittany was trouble, but I never thought." "I didn't either," I said. But Patricia saw it coming. She told me to document everything, and thank God I listened. The hardest part wasn't the legal process. It wasn't the police interviews or the court dates. It was the grief. I'd already lost Linda. Now I'd lost my son too. Not to death, but to greed and entitlement. The Kyle I'd raised, the boy who'd cried when we had to give away his childhood dog, who'd brought me coffee in bed on Father's Day, who'd held my hand at Linda's funeral, that Kyle was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed the way I thought he did. 3 months later, I was at Tim Hortons with Frank when I saw Kyle walk in. He looked terrible. Thinner, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled jacket. He saw me and froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he walked over. "Dad." "Kyle." Frank tensed beside me, but I touched his arm. "It's okay." Kyle sat down. His hands were shaking. "Brittany left me. Filed for divorce last month. Turns out she'd been cheating on me with her boss for the past year. She only wanted me because she thought I'd inherit your house." I didn't say anything. "I was so stupid," Kyle continued. "I let her convince me that you were the problem, that you were selfish for not helping us. But you were right. We weren't struggling because we didn't have enough. We were struggling because we kept spending money we didn't have, trying to keep up with her friends, her lifestyle. I'm $75,000 in debt, Dad. Credit cards, line of credit, everything." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Are you?" His voice cracked. "Because I ruined everything. I tried to steal from you. I watched Brittany hurt you and didn't stop her. I don't blame you for writing me out of your will. I don't blame you for not wanting to see me." I sighed. "Kyle, I don't want you out of my life. I want you to get help. Real help. Therapy for whatever led you to make these choices. Financial counseling. Addiction support if you need it. I want you to become the person I thought you were." "Can I?" he asked. "Can I come back from this?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But you can try. And I'll be here if you do the work." "But Kyle," I leaned forward, making sure he heard me clearly. "I will never let you into my house unsupervised again. I will never give you access to my finances. I will never trust you the way I used to. You destroyed that. If you want any kind of relationship with me, it starts from zero, and you rebuild it with actions, not words." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Okay, I'll do whatever it takes. Then start by going to a counselor. Patricia knows someone good. I'll give you her number." He left a few minutes later. Frank looked at me. "You think he'll actually do it?" "I don't know," I admitted, but I had to give him the chance. "You're a better man than I am." "I'm a father," I said. "Even when your kids break your heart, you still love them. But love doesn't mean being a doormat." That was 6 months ago. Kyle did go to counseling. He's been going every week, and he joined a financial recovery program. He got a job at Canadian Tire, not glamorous, but steady, and he's slowly paying down his debt. We meet for coffee once a month. The conversations are still awkward, still painful, but they're happening. I'm still in my house, still playing old-timers hockey on Thursdays, still restoring radios in my basement, still grabbing coffee with Frank. Patricia comes over for dinner every Sunday, and Tom visits when he can. The cut on my chest healed, but there's a small scar. Sometimes I touch it and remember that night. The shock of cold coffee, the sting of broken ceramic, the look on Brittany's face, the silence from my son. But I also remember what came after, the strength I found to protect myself, the friends who stood by me, the lawyer who helped me build safeguards, the police who took me seriously. I'm 64 years old. I'm not elderly. I'm not incompetent. I'm not a pushover. I'm a man who loved his wife, who built a life in this house, who worked hard for everything he has. And I'll be damned if I let anyone, family or otherwise, take that from me. If there's anything I want people to know from my story, it's this. Set your boundaries. Keep your records. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone tries to tell you you're selfish for protecting yourself, they're probably trying to exploit you. Age doesn't make you a target. Kindness isn't weakness. And sometimes, the hardest thing you'll ever do is stand up to the people you love most. But you do it anyway, because you deserve respect. You deserve safety. You deserve peace in your own home. Linda used to say, "Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm." I didn't understand what she meant until she was gone, but I understand now. I hope Kyle finds his way back to being the person he could be. I hope he learns the lessons he needs to learn. But whether he does or not, I'm going to be okay. Because I chose myself, and that's not selfish. That's survival.